If you're watching this channel, I have to assume that you get book advice from these two sources. First of all, booktubers like myself, and second of all, book prizes such as the Woman's Prize. So I've decided to ask the question today, who gives better recommendations, booktubers or book prize judges? Earlier this year, I read the Woman's Prize for Fiction longlist, and once I completed that, I decided to look up a bunch of prediction videos that booktubers made and create my own alternative longlist based on those booktuber predictions. And now we're going to determine who created the better longlist, booktubers versus judges. So after watching 10 booktubers give their predictions, I created my own long list, and I think it's only fair that I give my 10 unknowing judges a quick shout out. These are all quality channels who follow the Women's Prize and make content about that. So if you're interested in that prize, these are all very worthy channels to subscribe to. Firstly, I included the two amazing women who run the Women's Prize plot along, Gem of Books and Charlie Brooks. Gem gives these amazing salty reviews of books that she doesn't give along with. Plus, she just geeks out to miserable books, historical fiction and speculative fiction. Her partner in crime for booktube silliness is Charlie Brooks. Charlie is one of the best read booktubers out there, and of all the booktubers on this list, she probably reads the closest to the Woman's Prize style of literature. Lid Loves is a new channel to me, and I've been loving her content, especially her Women's Prize videos. She gives me fast-growing channel making excellent content vibes, combining fun with quality reviews. Kerry's Bookish Adventure and Wellbeing reads a little differently to everybody else, and she's not afraid to jump off the well-beaten path and champion unheralded books. I'm adding quite a few books to my TBR because of Kerry. I know that this is a video where we're talking about the Women's Prize, but there are 3 men who celebrate this prize too. And I don't know if they're feminists or book nerds, but I think it's probably fair to say both. Ben Reads Good, Eric Carl Anderson, and Simon Savage. My favourite bookish frenemy is Shelley Swearingen. Shelley is so enthusiastic about books and always puts so much research into her videos. I'm not sure it's to make a good video. I think she's just really excited about books, but it does result in a good video. Camilla at the channel has such a Woman's Prize fan. I feel like I've said this 1,000 times in this video, but she's a book nerd who gets excited about all things books. She reads a lot of Canadian and Scottish literature celebrating her heritages, as well as global and translated books, as well as a range of genres. She's a little bit eclectic. Her fellow Canadian Jess from the channel Stalking Kafka is a bookish genius, but her videos give me complete chaotic joy energy. It gives such a different vibe, and I really love that. You never know if you're going to laugh or if she's going to say something intelligent that makes your brain explode. So based on those 10 booktubers predictions, I've produced a long list. It's fair to say that some of these books were recommended by multiple booktubers, while others were championed by just one. Let's go through the alternate long list. The Most by Jessica Anthony, The Volcano Daughters by Gina Maria Balibrera, We Pretty Pieces of Flesh by Colwill Brown, Above Us the Sea by Ania Card, Small Bomb at Dimperley by Lissa Evans, Blackwoods Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey, The Unwilding by Marina Kemp, Waiting for a Party by Vesna Main, A Great Marriage by Frances Mayers, Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates, Quarterlife by Devika Rege, Passiontide by Monique Roffey, Sweet Vidalia by Lissa Sandlin, and May All Your Skies Be Blue by Fiona Scarlett. It's such an interesting long list. I'm not sure it would ever exist in reality. It is so diverse. Maybe not diverse in the ethnicity sense, but definitely in the style of books sense. And I think the lack of ethnic diversity on this long list is to do with me insisting on picking books that I haven't read before so that I can have the most fun with this experiment. And my general reading aim is to jump around the globe with every book as much as possible. Anyway, let's review the books, and starting with The Most by Jessica Anthony. It is a Sunday in 1957, and one woman has decided to stay in her pool instead of going to church, and point blank refuses to get out. Like ever. Set over a day, we learn that Kathleen was very good at tennis in her past. We learn of an affair she had with her tennis coach and how she turned him down to be with her husband Virgil, a disappointingly average man. Virgil, on the other hand, wishes he was disappointingly average, pushing himself out there to make his wife happy, landing a prestigious marketing job that values golf and day drinking more than any sort of skill. This is a novel about infidelity, about what we know and what we pretend to know and what we know that the other person knows, and how we intentionally stay ignorant of what we might know while still negotiating with our partner to get what we want. And I hope any of that makes sense to you. It's a book about subtext. And if you've ever read a book and you've wanted to yell at the characters, just have an honest conversation, you idiots, you're gonna hate this book. I was mildly entertained. I kind of enjoyed the manipulation in this book, but was there enough for this to be a novel, or was it really just a short story? You know, I think it's pretty much a short story. The plot was simple. Yeah, it was well done, but I don't think I was expecting it to be the best aspect of the book. The characters were also simple, and they could have been done better, I have to say. They weren't poorly done enough for me not to enjoy the book, but if we're looking at places that this book could have been improved in, then it's the characters. The setting, I have no idea why this was based in 1957. I don't see why or what it adds. I guess that maybe it's because of the cliche of an office man sleeping with his secretary, but men have been cheating on women since the shrimp-like creature first evolved a penis 425 million years ago. It could have been set anywhere. I've nothing to complain about the prose. I just think there's not enough happening in this book. Everything is okay, everything's fine, but it's just too simple to be anything special. It's a book that lacks the ambition to win anything. Am I surprised this book missed out on the Woman's Prize longlist? No, I'm not. This is a fairly underwhelming novel, and it's neither good enough nor is it bad enough to really make any book prize long lists, except for the ones that it has actually made the long lists of, like the National Book Award, for example. But let's not let facts get in the way of an opinion. The Volcano Daughters by Gina Maria Balibrera. If you're new here, you may not realise just how hard I DNF books. I don't tell you about many of the books I DNF'd unless I think I can deliver some sort of insightful review. In this video, you're about to learn exactly how hard I DNF books. The Volcano Daughters is a book I would usually not bother reviewing. I don't have much to say about it of substance at all. I found the prose unclear and confusing, which is never helped by the book being a magical realism novel, and the characters were a tangled mess. The work did not have the quality that I would like, the plot was not engaging enough, and the characters lacked the curiosity to make me want to read more. That is 3 reasons I will read a book to the end, and it fails on all 3 counts. As such, I DNF'd this at about 40 pages into it, so maybe take that negative review with a little grain of salt. I'm completely unsurprised this book missed the Woman's Prize long list. We Pretty Pieces of Flesh by Colwill Brown. This is a fragmented novel about 3 women in Doncaster, Yorkshire. We follow incidents from their life over a 15-year period, from 14 or 15 to 29 or 30. And this paints a picture of this changing dynamic between friends as they grow up and move in separate directions. There are big themes around friendship and how that intense friendship you feel when you're a teenager is tested as life moves on and as your values diverge from your friends, and how a threesome doesn't always make a good twosome. But there is really quite a lot going on beneath the surface, and what you learn as this book develops is there is that drifting apart, but there are also a couple of key events that really shatter this friendship, and those events are really examined in quite a lot of detail. We only have to look at the title of this book to know that friendship isn't the only theme. It is a book about the objectification of women. We pretty pieces of flesh. There is a scene early on where one of the girls casually has her nipple grabbed by a boy at a club, and he walks off, and this girl is confused. She doesn't know if she's excited, if she's sexually advanced, or if she's sexually assaulted. She feels this weird combination of valued and violated, and that murkiness, that in between, that both, that is just the tip of the iceberg of what this novel is exploring. We also see things like substance abuse and binge drinking, all in the name of teenage experimentation. And you don't explore teenage experimentation fully without some sort of sexual experimentation. This is an absolute strength of the novel. It is one thing for the teenage girls to be curious or interested in sex, but it's another thing for them to actually do it. And this is again where we're sort of blurring the line between these different words: consent, rape, coercion, sexual assault, being taken advantage of. The answer to that question really isn't the point. It is the confusion. It is who benefits it. It is who is just a piece of flesh. The label doesn't matter. The experience and the impact does. Additionally, Doncaster is not exactly a well-off neighbourhood, and the difference between the haves and the have-nots are very evident and adds another delicious layer to this novel. The setting in an ex-mining town really works. The prose is all in this native Donny tongue, and some readers are going to be scared that they need a Yorkshire to English dictionary beside them to read this book. I personally loved the prose. It creates the setting really well. It creates character and it gives a poetic feel to the novel that we don't often get to experience. And I don't think it is the slightest bit inaccessible to readers. I mean, if you've read Shakespeare, you're familiar with thou and thee. The rest of the words are much easier than William Shakespeare. The context of most of the sentences gives you the meaning of the unfamiliar Yorkshire words. The fragmented nature of the structure means Colwill Brown is free to jump around in time, spoon-feeding us bits of information which helps explain and build the relationship. This makes it a little confusing to read, but it's only due to the depth of information and the complexity of the relationships she is trying to discuss. This is the kind of novel that would give a different experience upon rereading. I'm not saying that it would be better or worse. I'm just saying that you're probably not going to get everything the first time because there is so much going on. It's not that it's hard, it's that it's complex. And if this were to be longlisted for any book prize, I suspect that it would be quite likely to be shortlisted because most book prizes require the judges to reread the long list. And We Pretty Pieces of Flesh has that ability to grow and show us new things, allowing the judges to appreciate it more. The characters are well drawn, but they're maybe not quite up to the other standards in this novel. Now, I am very much nitpicking here. There are plenty of books out there that are much worse than this that I don't bother picking faults in. In this case, I mention it because this is a superb novel that could have been something really special. I mean, this could have been generationally good, and I guess we're just going to have to settle for fantastic. But you know what? Even in that criticism, I do wonder, will it hold up on a reread? And don't be put off by this rather mild bit of criticism. This is an incredible read and one you should all go out and find a copy of so that you can enjoy as well. The marketing of this book compared it to Shuggie Bain, and I do think that's a fairly good yardstick. If you're a lover of Shuggie, pick this one up. Am I surprised this missed the Woman's Prize long list? Well, yes and no, but maybe that is the wrong question to ask in this case. Should this book have made the Woman's Prize long list this year? Yes, 100% it missed out and it should have made it. Given the style of the other books listed, am I shocked that it missed out? No. I'm pretty disappointed the judges couldn't identify a book of quality such as this one, but no, I'm not shocked that it missed out. It doesn't fit in with the other novels. Any other year, any other group of judges, and this is not just longlisted, this is shortlisted, and it's a potential winner. This is the kind of book that has Women's Prize and Booker Prize crossover, and if it's not longlisted for this year's Booker Prize, I will be very surprised. Above Us, The Sea by Ania Card. A gay bar in Cardiff, and Tony and Gav meet and instantly become amazingly close friends. Tony moves in with Gav and his boyfriend Carol. Told from the point of view of Tony, you get a real sense of all three relationships on hand here. Tony likes both boys and girls, and she is exploring where she belongs in the LGBT world. She has never been with a woman before and is unsure of herself. She also very clearly loves Gav. Tony's friendship with both Gav and Carol blurs the line between friendship and more than friends. There's something deep and passionate about those relationships, but it's not physical, yet it's still more than best friends. It's kind of similar to the way Caleb Azuma Nelson builds the relationship between his characters. This deep friendship that somehow both surprises you and doesn't surprise you in the slightest bit when it becomes physical. But Card doesn't cross that line. At least she doesn't cross it by much. Gav is a former boxer, and when he takes Tony to his boyhood home for a party, there are assumptions. Not that Gav isn't out, but Carol with a K and Carol with a C both come from the root name Charles and were both originally masculine names. But in medieval times, in English-speaking countries, Carol with a C transformed into a feminine name, while in German and Slavic countries it remained masculine. As such, I'm sure you can see with Gav's friends and family, there may be a little bit of putting two and two together and coming up with heteronormativity. I also love how Card challenges your assumptions with Gav, who comes across as such a flamboyant and femme gay man, but when he is around his home people, he comes across as stronger, and he's a retired boxer. He is not somebody you want to mess with. Softness and femininity are not weaknesses. They're personality traits that can make you either strong or weak depending on the situation and the other aspects of your character. And I love how that challenges our assumptions of traditional gendered roles. To label this novel as an exploration of LGBT life is to sell it very short. That is definitely part of the equation of this novel, but there is more to a gay person's life than rainbow flags, and there is more to this book than that too. Depression is a massive theme in this novel, and in the relationships between these characters, Gav and Tony are both depressed when they meet. Later in the novel, Tony and Carol are both going through some heavy life events which are very similar to one another. And this form of depression and trouble, it acts as a bonding agent, bringing our characters closer together. For a book that really isn't afraid to explore some of the darkest sides of our existence and present it in a very raw and grim fashion that will make you feel some deep emotions, this sort of friendship is almost wholesome. I see you and I love you. I love you because of what I see, and I do see you. There is also an immigration story. Both Tony and Carol are Polish and gay, and a horrific fact about being gay in Poland that I didn't know, but Poland is making steps towards LGBT equality. In April this year, they repealed a resolution that allowed LGBT-free zones, and in May, they officially overtook Romania to become only the second worst country in the EU for LGBT rights. I think that provides the context to Tony and Carol's UK life, the fear of going home. There is a lot about this book I haven't discussed, things like Tony's unhappiness in a relationship with a man later on, but thematically there is a lot going on and I only have so much time to discuss them in this video. Great character work, and even though he was the character I discussed the least, I think Carol is probably the best drawn character in this novel. There's not so much a plot, but rather a series of events that that impact and test our characters. There's not some great suspense that you care about, but rather the plot provides some opportunities for us to empathise with and learn about our characters. The plot endears these three characters to us and makes us invest in them. This is a really strong and solid novel. Am I surprised this didn't make the Women's Prize longlist? A bit, but it's not a typical Women's Prize style book. Look, there would have been loads of panels in the past that this would have been longlisted for, and on the strength of this novel, I would say that that would be correct. But there's also plenty of panels in the past that would have just ignored it like this year's judges did too. We've had two excellent books in a row. Time for another book that didn't work for me. Small Bomb at Dimbley by Lissa Evans. This has got a very charming PG Wodehousian feel to it. It is a comedy of manners, schemes, class, romance and inheritance, set just after the war and revolving around an estate in which the person who has it doesn't really want it, and the person who wants it doesn't actually have it. This is definitely not the height of literature. It is a comedy, and there are two reasons one might DNF a comedy. If the jokes are not particularly good, or if there is too much time between the jokes. And in this novel's case, both of them are true. Also, I don't think that this was particularly well executed. I think there was poor prose, and I think the plot was needlessly complex, making it hard work for very little reward. I wanted to like this, but I simply didn't. Am I surprised this didn't make the long list? Well, obviously not. But even if this was well written, even if it had better humour, I still would be surprised if this got longlisted. It is just simply not the sort of books the Women's Prize goes for. Blackwoods Blue Sky by Eowyn, Ivey. I found this book to be unreadable nonsense, and I gave up pretty early. I gave up too early to have anything really intelligent to say about this book. A mother and a daughter adopt a bear, and I believe that this is some kind of Beauty and the Beast retelling in which the mother and the bear get together, and this kind of feels like somebody bringing up their bondage kink on a first date. It's not so much that I'm a prude that doesn't want to mix sex and pain. I am, but that's immaterial. I'm more concerned that I haven't shared my location with anybody, and I don't want to give somebody the power to tie me up and then steal my kidneys and sell them on the black market. Some scars are simply too deep for aftercare. And some authors need to calm down and develop a character before hitting their readers over the head with bestiality. But also, I really hate the way that Ivey wrote this. Even if they weren't playing around with bestiality, even if they were just writing about, I don't know, depression or a relationship or something, I still wouldn't be down for reading this one. I am not surprised this wasn't longlisted. It was unreadable. The Unwilding by Marina Kemp. This novel's a bit of a slow burn, and I definitely recommend reading it when you have a little bit more patience and a little bit more time to invest in the literature. But this is a novel that will repay the initial investment. When a young author, Zoe, arrives at the house of famed author Don Travers, she thinks she has it made. As Zoe's time with the Travers extends from days into weeks, it is Don's children and wife who are of more interest to Zoe than Don. While for Don, it is Don who is of the most interest for him. Years later, Don's youngest daughter, Nemini, who is a new mother and in a relationship that is being tested by a baby, meets Zoe again, and they rekindle their friendship. With these two timelines, we have what is a fairly simple plot, but the relationships and how the earliest timeline impacts upon the latest timeline. It's done with so much thought and nuance. It creates this really complex web of interactions. It turns what is something simple into something with a lot of depth. I love that in a book. I love how things that appear simple actually have a lot of moving parts. That is the ultimate joy, because you can get such a little bit out of it that works, or you can get so much out of it. Zoe is fascinated with the Travers family and may or may not be writing a novel about their past and their family history. If she is, that puts her motives for her friendship with Nemini in question. But she's also found Nemini heartbroken, drunk, and in need of a friend. She's looked after her when she was vulnerable. Was she callously opportunistic, or did she just help a woman in need? And I guess this is a real question around friendship and fame and fortune and all of those things. But another question this raises, and I think this is a good question, is who has the right to tell a story? Zoe was involved with the Traverses. Although she certainly wasn't a central player, she could argue it is still her story. And this is a question I think so central to being an author, yet I don't think there's a simple answer to it. I don't think you can come up with a rule that will work for all situations. I think you have to look at the situations on their own, which makes it such a glorious theme. And this theme, it's not just explored from the point of view of Zoe writing a book. Another member of the family paints a picture, and obviously this is a book. It is a book without pictures. You can never see this painted image and judge it for yourself, but you have various characters arguing what the artist was saying with the painting and finding some meanings that are quite critical of Don Travers, and this becomes really meta. Do you trust what is there on the paper, knowing that the characters who are saying it are biased, knowing that you're hearing the conversation through another entity as well? It just takes away all the reliability. It is very Wuthering Heights in that sense. And all of this discussion about who has the right to tell a story and what do these stories really mean, it all links back to that really old theme, the death of the author. And now personally, I find that theme a little bit overdone and a little bit tiring, but Kemp is showing you just enough to show you where it intersects with the question who has the right to tell a story, and she's moving the conversation on. If you like, death of the author is first year, and it's the prerequisite for the second year subject of who gets to tell a story. It relies on us knowing about it. Kemp has included some other big and important themes: motherhood, family, legacy, and the role of women dominated by a world of men. But also, in that last feminist theme, you get to see how feminism has changed between the two timelines. But Don Travers is still alive and he is still dominating. Again, it's a very smart way of showing you the complexities of a theme. I mean, the gender pay gap, the glass ceiling, they're things that I think are not too complex. We agree they're bad things. Equal pay for equal work and all that. They're pretty black and white issues. But just by looking at this one man, just by placing him in a position of power and privilege for his entire life, we see how hard progress is to make, and we see exactly why it is so slow. We see how the issue moves too far in. We see how when we focus on the minor issues, what might appear to be feminist from the outside becomes about other things, other personal things, and it gets obscured, leaving us with a non-feminist outcome. I think it's very cleverly done. We're almost zooming too far in to see any feminist interpretation in what is happening to Don Travers, but it is clearly there. There is a lot more going on in the themes here. This is a book that is doing a lot. I'm not going to mix my words here and find a nice way of saying it. This is a book for big-brained readers. Specifically, this is a book for intelligent readers who have an intelligent friend who also wants to read this book. Because yes, it is quite complex. Yes, you will see different things. And very simply, this is a book that will create conversation. And this is a novel that doesn't work without well-considered characters. And in Zoe and Nemini, we have really good characters. Am I surprised that this missed out on the Women's Prize longlist? No. I don't think that this is a particularly accessible novel, and the plot, look, it is very well done, but it is not well balanced with the other aspects of this novel. It is a character and a theme novel, and that is what it is trying to be. I am surprised that this book didn't make the Booker long list last year. It is definitely more of a Booker book than a Women's Prize book. And look, if this book did make the Women's Prize long list, it definitely wouldn't have been a shock. Quality-wise, it deserves to be there. Stylistically, it's not the sort of book that makes it. Waiting for a Party by Vesna. Claire is 92 and is laying in bed one morning waiting to be driven to her friend's Martin 102nd birthday party. While waiting, she considers her life, reminisces about her marriage, her lovers, her failed attempt to become a concert pianist, her lack of children, and if she murdered her husband, and the joys of sex. Over 20 years younger than her husband, Claire plays the role of a child in their relationship. Lacking experience, power, and confidence, he assumes the assertive role. It's not that he was an abusive husband at all. I wouldn't say that he was a bad husband, but I would say that he was a poor husband, and I hope the distinction there is obvious. 22 years of marriage and then he dies. You'll have to read the book to find out if Claire killed him, but the quiet unhappiness, the wondering if there is more to life that Claire feels during their marriage, that comes across. Claire then has a string of meetings with men. Martin, her neighbour, and ex-best friend with Bill, her now deceased husband. The two fell out when Martin included Bill in one of his crime novels. Martin longs for Claire, but Claire is not so sure. He's a nice man, but he lacks the excitement that was missing in her relationship with Bill. Instead, there is another man out there with an intriguing face, a man who sat next to her at a play, a man who is sexually quite experienced and does things to Claire that I definitely didn't expect to read about in a novel about an old lady. Even when I was warned there was some rather dirty sex in this novel. Claire, for her part, is coming out of her shell and she wants to experience all sex has to offer her. It makes sense that she's trying new things. This is the kind of writing I really like in my sex scene. If a character has an orgasm during sex, well, good for you, but I just don't care. Claire is learning about her body. She's learning about her desires, what she does and does not like. She is gaining confidence and empowerment from the sex she is having. It is a real emotional experience, not in terms of loving the guy on the other end of the penis, although that is a complication in this novel too, but it is in terms of loving herself and in terms of understanding what she is into and what she isn't into. It is Claire being allowed to make choices. This is a coming-of-age novel, but our protagonist is a widow. She is the sort of woman often invisible in the media, but she's so intensely likeable and interesting. Vesna really allows us to see inside Claire's head, feel her doubts and desires. Along the way, we meet a handful of men, all flawed, but none horrible, none bad, all worthy of friendship and time. But the negotiation between both parties and what they want from their relationship with each other is very interesting, and it does give this book a real feminist edge. You start reading this book wondering where it is going to go, what is the plot going to do, and by the end you don't care about the plot. You just want more of this amazing character. You want more Claire. She is my favourite character I have read in 2025. She is the character I would most like to hang out with. Am I surprised this book didn't get longlisted? Small press debut author, but if it was HarperCollins or Penguin Random House, if it were written by Miriam Taves or Louise Erdrich, it almost definitely makes the long list. But it's Salt, it's Vesna. Quite a lot of people watching this have probably not heard of either of them, so I guess I'm not surprised. Also, if you have a look at Salt Publishing's website, they do have a few titles that look amazing. And as an independent publisher, they only get to put one title forward to the judging panel. So it might be that this one didn't even get in front of the judges in the first place. A Great Marriage by Frances Mayers. The hot and cold reviews continue, and this is another DNF, another book I couldn't stand the writing style of. I was just bored and couldn't concentrate. Then I was getting lost, and I realised that while I was physically reading this book, I didn't know what the words were even saying. I don't have a review in this novel other than to say that the book failed to suck me in. Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. This is a historical fiction novel about Silas Weir, the father of modern gynopsychiatry and a cruel and arrogant psychopath. This is a cathartic character assassination of a first-class pig, a torturer and an egotist. We did all kinds of horrible things to women. He essentially practiced medical torture in order to find things out. He believed things like the vagina doesn't have any nerve endings in it, so women can't feel pain or pleasure there. Oates makes the brave choice to tell a large part of this story from his point of view. You have such a horrible character that you're in the head of, and it doesn't make for the easiest of reading, but it is an excellent choice because it provides us with insight that I don't think would have been gleamable from another character. Weir has a young Irish indentured servant called Bridget, and what fascinates me about this is that Weir is noted as anti-slavery, but he essentially keeps Bridget as a slave. I certainly hope everybody watching this is of the opinion that what happened to black and African people regarding slavery in the US is wrong and a horrible crime. It really does date the era of this book that was a debatable subject at the time, and one that Weir even could have benefited from being on the side of slavery. But the slavery that happened to the Irish, it's often said that is completely different to the slavery that happened to the black people. And it is, but let's be realistic about this. They do share a considerable amount in common, and to see that being acceptable to Weir while he practices abolitionist points of view is a very interesting double standard. I'm not sure how common Weir's point of view on this was at the time, but it is very clear to me how self-serving Weir is being. Oates is particularly brilliant at boiling the frog. At the beginning of this novel, Weir is not completely detestable. I mean, you still don't care for him, but he's more pathetic than he is dangerous, and he slowly gets worse and worse as the novel progresses, and you can see how, giving his starting position, he justifies his actions, and once it is normalized, he pushes it just a little bit further. It's not all cruelty. I loved how shy Weir is around women, which does make his choice of career as a gynecologist a very interesting one. Can't talk to women? Here, examine their private parts for a living. There is also a great storyline between Weir's oldest son and Bridget, and I love the exploration of consent that this brought up. It's definitely not simple, but we're looking at the power dynamics. We're looking at situational coercion rather than what we traditionally think of as coercion. Coercion through not centering the position of the other person rather than a force or manipulation. I feel somewhat bizarrely that this is a great demonstration of why teacher-student relationships or boss-employee relationships are really terrible and unethical. But obviously, when you make somebody an indentured servant, you're turning those themes up to 11. I think that this is a really good, well-crafted novel that both entertained and educated me about a point in history I didn't know a lot about. Thematically and technically, this isn't anything new or incredible. It's just well done and doesn't detract from the strength of this book, which is to put a monster on a page and let you gasp. So while I have nothing but praise for this book, I don't think it's a perfect book. I just think it's a really good read. This is the sort of novel that would have been very at home with being on the Woman's Prize long list. It is not the slightest bit out of place, but also it is not screaming, "I was robbed." Just a good read. Quarterlife by Devika, Rege. And we're back on the DNFs. I think you can definitely see my tactic for reading the most number of amazing books here. This one didn't grab me at all, and all I can really remember is that a wealthy Indian American couple are moving back to Dubai to be with the male in the relationship's brother. I believe that this is going to develop into an exploration of nationalism, but I was bored, and I both didn't like the protagonists, nor was I fascinated in them. Nothing made me want to learn more about the protagonists. Actually, I do think that they may have been quite poorly constructed, although I'm possibly being a tad harsh as I DNF'd this book pretty early on. But I promise, this was my last DNF. Passiontide by Monique Roffey. Look, I read Mermaid of the Black Conch, Roffey's previous book, and I thought it was fine. I liked it, but I didn't understand the hype. So I was planning on skipping this one, and I am so glad I didn't. This is the kind of book I love, and it's done really well. Now, this is based on a real event in Trinidad, and I think that's really smartly written and included into this because it is also a retelling of Lysistrata. A Japanese pan player is found murdered during Carnival, and this serves as a catalyst for the women on the island protesting and striking against gendered violence, which includes a lot of different protests. But it's a retelling of Lysistrata. You know what the main protest is. It is a sex strike. I love how Roffey balances the ancient Greek play with real life examples and concerns about sexism and gendered violence in Trinidad. The merging of them is quite clever and genius. The incompetent and lack of care by the predominantly male police force, the politician who thinks he cares but just doesn't get it, and along the way shows everybody he's more concerned with relationships with Japan than he is with women's rights, and he is unknowingly victim blaming people and comes across as quite a sexist pig. I really do enjoy the role his wife plays in the novel too. She is a fantastic character. The question I've been asking myself every review in this video is, am I surprised this book didn't make the Woman's Prize longlist? Let's get this out of the way early. Flabbergasted. Had I read this book before the longlist was announced, I would have been telling you that it was a potential winner. It would have been the favourite to win the Woman's Prize in my opinion. It's important, it's easy to read, but it contains so many literary Easter eggs. I love it when a book is both accessible and intelligent, with the perfect balance of being a plot and a character book to boot. Both aspects are so strong. The themes do sound really simple. I mean, if you agree with gendered violence, please do us all a favour and fuck off. But what I love is how Roffey develops the characters and shows you the human side of being an activist, of being a protester. Women don't have one voice, but hundreds, thousands, millions. Well, actually half a dozen if you're reading this book. But each woman has their own feelings about the strike. Obviously, they want to get what they want out of it. But there are practicalities too. The woman in a new relationship who is finding it hard to resist her new man. The woman who has to go home and look after her children. The woman there just to vent their anger, and the woman plotting for actual change. The question is, how far will everybody go? The practical side of what can be done versus what they are actually asking for. It's a very interesting dissection of the difficulties of enacting change through activism. To that extent, I would say the ending of this book has a lot to say on this topic as well. I really adore this book. The characters, fantastic. The plot is really engaging. The setting has such a sense of place. The prose is really hoping to build the other aspects. The little bit of Trini slang adds to the setting so nicely. The themes are just really well done, and they're explored through humans. They're not overly didactic or intellectualized. They're humans. Their emotions, they're real. One of the best books I have read in 2025. And if you're a fan of the type of books the Woman's Prize usually promotes and long lists, then you'll love this. It really reminds me of Camilla Shamsi's novel Homefire, which in a year I would rate as potentially the best ever Woman's Prize long list. Was the winner. Just like Homefire, Passiontide is a Greek retelling. Just like Homefire, it is very emotional with big plot, amazing characters. It goes into dark places. It is intelligent and accessible. Similar novels in terms of quality and how they read. Just an all-round brilliant book. And when I compare a novel to Homefire and say it is just as good, you know that it's a special book. Sweet Vidalia by Lissa Sandlin. This book has a classic feel to it. It doesn't feel like a new book. It feels like an old treasure that has been forgotten by everybody but recently been rediscovered. If you had have said that this was written in the 1920s instead of the 2020s, I could have believed you. Eliza arrives home and her husband has something important to tell her. Was that important thing, I'm about to have a crippling heart attack and die before I get to tell you the important thing, please rush me to hospital now? Maybe, but I think it was much more likely that the secret he was hiding from her, the secret that comes out after his eventual death, was about to be dropped. This is a novel about Eliza, and I can only think of one word to describe her, and that word is resilience. She has things thrown at her after things thrown at her. She has to find a way to survive this world when what Eliza should be doing is settling down, putting her feet up and winding down. Instead, she's having to pedal really hard just to keep her head above water. Eliza, don't take your bicycle to a swimming pool. This is such a well-worn but satisfactory story arc. Start with a big fall, then combine it with further setbacks and processing of the emotions around the setbacks, until our protagonist drags her way out of the muck despite even more setbacks. We love this storyline. It's the reason that almost every action hero in a movie is unemployed, an alcoholic, or Sylvester Stallone. But you know what else is satisfying and well-worn? Pizza. You've probably eaten 1,000 pizzas in your lifetime, but next week when you go out for lunch and you order your 1,001st pizza, you're still going to enjoy it. I don't care how many times I've read about an underdog who is stripped of everything but still finds the energy to fight back. That is enjoyable. That is a classic plot for a reason. The communication of Eliza's emotions was satisfactory but could have been stronger. She goes through a lot and the prose comes across slightly cold and matter-of-fact with this. Reviewing a book, sometimes we need to be hypercritical, and I'm not saying that this element was bad, but it could have definitely been stronger. In contrast, I have a really good idea of how Eliza will respond to certain situations. The exploration of themes in this novel was by choice a little dire, and I think that sort of gets to the point of what this book is trying to do. It is fantastic at building a good story. It's a very successful book, but if you want to pull it apart and analyze it, it's a little bit harder. This was the perfect addition to the long list that I was reading. It wasn't out of place, but it added a balance to it, and I think this year's Woman's Prize would have been stronger if it was included. However, that it missed out, surprised I am not. May All Your Skies Be Blue by Fiona Scarlett. This is a complex love story that looks at how the role of caring for somebody impacts upon their love life. Shauna and Dean are meant to be, but in their youth they seem to never be able to get things together. Told from the point of view of Shauna, it is very clear that Dean adores her, but that she is suffering from that phenomenon. You know when somebody is hitting on your friend, when somebody is interested in your mate, but then somebody else is hitting on you and you have absolutely no idea? That's what Shauna feels about Dean. This is not just a romance novel. I mean, while it is a romance novel, it definitely belongs in the literary fiction genre. It's not always following the rules of romance, and it expends a lot of energy on Pamela and Mark, childhood friends of Dean and Shauna, who are more than bit part players in this novel designed to push the plot on. Then there is the illness and the burden of care that both Shauna and Dean face from their families. And this is really explored properly. The choice of your life. That makes it sound like a really big and important choice, rather than what I was actually saying of the choice of how you're going to live your life. I don't really want to tell you too much about this novel. It has quite a strong plot, and part of that is the mystery of what happens. Will they get together? How will they stuff it up? And the real strength of this plot is the use of pacing. Fiona Scarlett knows how to control her pace. She knows when to drag things out and to build suspense, and she knows when to fly into the juicy drama of a scene. After the plot, the characters are probably the next strongest element. You do get this sense of this darkness that both Dean and Shauna suffers from. You get this similarity between their psyche. You see why they're perfect for each other, but you only see them from a few angles. Those angles are really well done, but I'm left not feeling like I overly know the characters. I enjoyed the communication of anxiety, depression, hope, loneliness. I understand the self-destructive behaviour, but there exists a rather large choice in this novel that completely changes it. And it's not the sort of choice that you make and you need to stick to. You can change your mind with this choice. And the agony and the dilemma of that was lacking for me. It felt like the choice was made and the consequences were very important. It felt like the author was leading the character and not the other way around. And it's kind of fitting to finish this set of reviews on a real mixed bag. I feel like every book I read for this experiment was either excellent or terrible. So to finish with one somewhere in between, with bits that were excellent and bits that were terrible, is very accurate and sums up my reading experience quite well. I guess overall I enjoyed reading this and I'm happy I read it, but I certainly don't think I'm ever going to bother rereading it. I'm not too surprised this missed the Woman's Prize longlist. Still a very good read for you literary romance readers out there, but yeah, I wouldn't rush out to get this one. So I guess if this was a fake long list, what would the fake shortlist be? And my fake shortlist would be We Pretty Pieces of Flesh, Above Us the Sea, The Unwilding, Waiting for a Party, Butcher, and Passiontide. And I would push for Passiontide to be the winner, although I know these decisions are made by a panel rather than one person, and I could very easily be convinced to award We Pretty Pieces of Flesh the prize. I also loved every book that I put on this fake shortlist, so I wouldn't be upset if any of them won. So was this long list better than the actual Woman's Prize long list? In Amma, The Safekeep, Nesting, and The Dream Hotel, we had 4 excellent books, and they compare to Passiontide, We Pretty Pieces of Flesh, Above Us the Sea, Waiting for a Party, and The Unwilding. Birding, Good Girl, and A Little Trickery were books that I really enjoyed, and they compare to Butcher, Sweet Vidalia, and May All Your Skies Be Blue. The rest of the books on the Woman's Prize long list this year were, in my opinion, disappointing, overhyped, or just terrible. Fundamentally was a million times better than all 4s, but the fact is I could have done without reading either of them, and that's true for the remaining books that I reviewed in this video. So it's really close, and to be completely honest, I kind of want to say it's a draw, but that is a cop-out. And actually, if you have a look at what I said earlier, I compared Amma, The Safekeep, Nesting, and The Dream Hotel, 4 books, to Passiontide, The Unwilding, We Pretty Pieces of Flesh, Above Us the Sea, and Waiting for a Party. 5 books. So I will say that the BookTubers get it by just a small fraction in this experiment. Thank you for watching this video. This was just a little bit of fun for me, but depending on how many likes this video gets and how many of you subscribe, I'll do it again for the Booker Prize. I think that was a subtle hint, right? I'll be switching from Women's Prize mode to Booker mode for the next couple of months, and I'll be getting a prediction video out soon, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all of my wonderful Patreons for their support. Bye bye.